and welcome to the Salmon's Pizzeria podcast, bringing you your slice of Scottish football. I'm your host today, Ethan Hampton from the Dens Park Choir, and I'm joined by the one and only Goggsy and, of course, Paul Cooper. Gentlemen, how are we today?
All good. It's been a busy weekend for myself, so I'm happy to come and talk some more Scottish football.
I'm good, Ethan. How's yourself?
Very good. Feeling very spirited after a cold few weeks. Went away on holiday, came back, couldn't adjust to the cold weather, and Dundee were getting beat every week the past month until now. So, God bless the international break, stop and start, all that momentum. Talk about bringing the slice of of Scottish football coming over. Pizza pie, more like pizza piss for Hearts. That's where we'll start. They finally off the boil under new manager Neil Crickley. A very positive start, of course, it goes without saying, defeating St Mirren 4-0 at Tynecastle. Have you guys got the highlights? What do you guys make of the match?
I think that was a rubber stamp on what Critchley is, hopefully for Hearts, is what he's going to bring, because it was a lot more positive than what I've seen from Hearts this season. I've seen them a couple of times, and obviously they were very poor under Naismith, and they actually seem to have a proper game plan going forward.
Under Critchley, they did look really positive to start with, as Goggsy says. But St Mirren, they just weren't themselves on Saturday. Misplacing quite a lot of passes in midfield and things like that. But in Hearts, they were obviously buoyed up with a new appointment and making them pay for them. So the first two goals were amazing goals as well. I don't know if you've seen them or not.
Yeah, I'd call it all the action on sports team. But of course, one goal I think catches the eye more than the rest. And it's not so much for brilliance from Hearts, but just calamity for St Mirren. I want to say, was it goal number 3? Where it's the ball's dropped in on the 6-yard box, and there's just a complete misunderstanding. No one's on the same page between the goalkeeper Balcone, the centre halves, and essentially it's been able to bounce pretty much near the goal line and then tapped in from absolutely no range at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I've got interesting stats coming out as well. That you look at the St Mirren side. St Mirren traditionally very tough team to beat, but interestingly, I think it was the Pie and Bovril had done the goalkeeper save ratio, shots saved, and Balcone was sitting there, I think, second bottom at about 51%. Quite worrying going forward. I know they've got some very good news actually with Stephen Robinson signing that new bumper contract. But now you've got a goalkeeper when statistically half the shots essentially facing you are going in. Doesn't really stand well going further forward, and of course that's a very sore one to take. But in saying that, I can remember St Mirren coming to Dens last season, getting beat 4-0, and it didn't really seem to hamper them. Then they went on to get European football, so it could very well just be a setback only for the weekend. They've maybe got that character to bounce straight back up as they did last time.
Hopefully they will do that, but I was talking to some man fan the other day, and they were saying that Robertson's tried to move out Olasanya. He was like their kind of top striker last season. He's tried to move him out to the wing to bring Van Veen into the middle, and it just hasn't worked. So maybe that's something to look at in coming weeks again. And as you say, they might bounce back, hopefully.
Another thing I want to point out as well, at the start of the season for me, when I looked at that Hearts squad, I thought to myself, it's not aged well whatsoever. I was thinking they're going to be third place, maybe even pushing for second, what Aberdeen's now proven to be, based on just looking at the Hearts squad in the summer, just on paper. The depth looked just absolutely fantastic. But of course, it's not, football isn't panelled out on paper, it's decided on what's on the grass. And now, like I say, a very positive start. It couldn't have gotten much better for them, really. Emphatic win, clean sheet in front of the home fans. Get that new manager bounce, that buzz about the place. You feel now that will kind of get Hearts on course. I know it's early days, but surely the signs are there. I mean, the bounce could have went an awful lot worse for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's it's a great start for Critchley, and of course a morale boosting win ahead of a crunch match in Europe as well against Omonia. So, and also if they win that on Thursday night, then you could be looking at a decent run for Hearts going into it.
Well, they've got the derby coming up as well. With I believe is that the next
Yeah,
match day in the league. So really, it's a good start. It can end up being the perfect start. That's the one that all the fans will be eyeing up. And I think we'll move on to Hibs shortly, but that they'll be looking at that, dreading it the way it's coming, it's unfolding in regards to form. But would you guys agree though, when it comes to Derby, form can just goes out the window?
yeah, yes and no, but I think whenever you're talking Hibs, I mean Hibs have had a disastrous season so far as well. Uh, so like it could be a complete nil-nil fest, but also like even if Hearts didn't win on Saturday, I wouldn't have been surprised if Hearts went on and got their first domestic victory against Hibs because it almost feels like it was written on the wall.
I think Hearts will go on and should win that game because I mean Hibs they've showed that kind of mentality problems mainly towards the end of games, haven't they recently? So as you say, it's a one-off game. You never know, but I think the way it's looking, Hearts will go on and win that one.
More interestingly, in that victory over St Mirren, I'm looking at the starting lineup right now, and one of the main talking points with Hearts this season was when they signed boys like Blair Spittle, one that Goggsy knows ever so well, and Jan Danda from Ross County. There was this kind of feeling that can they play both at the same time? Do they fit in the same team, or was it an area they really had to address with more than the one addition of that sort of creative midfielder type that can score goals? But in this case, it appears that it was Spittle and Yandanda starting together in the midfield with Beningame and Boateng. So, of course, you then look at Boateng and Beningame to be the defensive steel of your midfield. Danda, Spittle, the creative influences, and then Vargas and Shankland expect the finish. But in saying that as well, it was an excellent assist from Shankland to set up one of the goals as well. Lovely first time played effort over the top to find Vargas. And, Vargas will get the credit. It's his goal, but let's be honest, the touch of class there, that's all from Shankland.
I think that was the first goal, wasn't it? I think they kind of brought the ball up midfield, and it was a lovely wee 1-2 they played. Shank played it back over. It shows a different side to his game. And I think that was Vargas' first goal of the season as well. So he'll be hoping to push on and get a few more goals again.
Yeah, I mean, well, Vargas last season, I think, kind of caught the eye in a fair few games, maybe a bit too hot and cold. Lawrence Shankland this season, I think he only got that first goal. Was it just the one before the international break? I want to say my memory can really be foggy sometimes. But there was this consensus that Hearts will only get going if Shankland's already going. If Shankland's scoring, Hearts are winning. That's the key. Get Shankland performing, and Hearts, as a result, will perform too. But in this case, he's not scored in the game, but they'll still be delighted that he's with his contribution, with his impact. Going on from here, I mean, I think he's known to start the season quite slow as well, Lawrence Shankland. So we can't really be at any, uh, can't be too hasty in writing him off already for another stellar goal scoring season.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's going a bit longer than what we expected for him to set the header alight. So maybe I don't want to say he's past his prime yet before he goes and scores a hat trick on Thursday because that would just make me look silly.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fair. Um, yeah, and for Shankland as well, everyone says he's just got that one last big contract in him. If you at least look at it from that sort of age, one-dimensional viewpoint, because I mean, I look at other players from the past. If you had signed guys like Stephen McLean, that formerly of Hearts and St Johnstone at 30 years old, or Kenny Miller at 30 years old, you have no idea that you'd actually maybe have almost a 10-year investment from that
Mhm.
point going forward. So you never know how long he can really keep it going for Shankland. But in this case, yeah, uh, he's getting on, as we say, in that one-dimensional viewpoint. Um, it probably is crucial that he is up and going regardless. Because I mean, what scenario does he really hold out if it's not the season he wants? If he goes a bit shy of the goal scoring ability that we know he's all got, what does that really tee up for him when previously he kind of felt like he had the world at his feet?
Um, I'm not entirely sure, but I don't think he's going to be at Hearts forever. So I think potentially it might be another sideways move that he has because like his family loves it in Edinburgh, etc. But I, I'm not entirely sure, so I'm not really. I don't feel too qualified to pass judgment.
Yeah,
I
well,
think he's got to start boosting the goals again really quickly. And if he can get up to where he was last season, well, there might be a bigger move in the cards again. But he needs to either do better than that or get close to it again, which is going to be hard now for him probably.
I mean, looking at the league table as it currently stands, they're joint bottom with Hibs with points. It's 5 points each. A goal difference deficit of just one. Then there's St Mirren on the other hand, sitting eighth place, 8 points. They seem to, in this recent run, not looking like their former selves on the back of four straight defeats, winless in five. They can probably trust Stephen Robinson to take them further forward. I'd like to hear your thoughts, Goggsy, because I think you seem to know him awfully well, obviously his time
Yeah.
at Motherwell. And I think a real test of a manager's ability is how they can steer the ship when it's been shook, when things begin to look bad. How does he drag them, out of the shit, so to speak?
I think usually what the best thing is to do is probably strip everything back, simplify all the basics, and restore to factory settings. Because, well, there is a history with Robbo. Like he always has one or two games a season where his team gets absolutely spanked, and he has no answer to it. And it may have come a bit too early for his liking this season, and also like he's got a history of bad runs. Like he took Motherwell on a couple of bad runs when he was at us, and I think he left after a 13 or 14 match uh, run without a win. And I think he's the first to recognise what's actually going wrong. So I think he'll be very honest with the guys in charge of him, and he'll just say to them, "Look, I know what's going wrong. I know how to fix it, and it might take a few games, but I think he'll be able to restore things back to how they were last season. So hopefully for him, things don't go too far south."
Is that what he does though, Goggsy? In those spells with Motherwell when things weren't looking so good, did he strip things back? Was that his method on getting on the right track again?
Yeah, especially one season where he went, because we were known as sort of hammer throwers, and we did that 3-5-2, and it was so successful for one part of the season, and then everyone found us out, and then he stripped everything back. He changed to a 4-3-3 when Jake Hasty came back from Alloa on loan, and I mean the three main players of that squad were Hasty, Turnbull, and Campbell, and we ended up narrowly just missing out on top six after a great run. We picked up like 15, 20 points in the last 11 games, which was really good, but we just missed the mark.
Yeah. What about you, Paul? In regards to Stephen Robinson getting that new contract, well deserved, questionable timing. What do you think?
I will. Is it been confirmed that he's got the contract? Because I know it was reported that he got offered it, but I don't know if
I
he's.
thought it had been. I thought it had been announced, but maybe I've imagined it. But I've certainly seen the reports.
Mm-hmm.
It is reported, but I think he's obviously got experience of what he's doing. So, but I think the experiment he tried, according to some St fan I spoke to with Van Veen and Olasanya, definitely didn't work. So,
Yeah.
that's maybe something that he can look at again. Um, Talented players like Boyd Munn sitting on the bench as well. They want to see the guys on the park. So maybe a wee look at youth in the coming games as well. Maybe can spiral them up a wee bit.
It is interesting if he does want to side Olasanya out because he is more than just leading the line. He has this habit of scoring quite big goals for St Mirren. At the point when they played Dundee at Dens, when I was taking my notes, I was looking at the record, and he's not a prolific goal scorer, but I think as of now, he has scored more goals for St Mirren than any other team in his career. And I just remember looking through that list, and he'd just been scoring in Europe, scoring against Aberdeen. He went on to score against us as well. This nice run. It just kind of felt like, well, he's taken a player who's not been performing, and he's really got him going. And that's the kind of confidence you really don't want to mess with. The two areas is probably more crucial. If it's not your goalkeeper, it's got to be your source of goals up front. So, yeah, no, interesting if Robinson is deciding to try and experiment going forward instead of going for what's proven, especially when you feel like Robinson's more or less an open book. You know what his teams are going to be like in terms of their organisation, how well drilled they are. Everyone knows the job they're supposed to do going out to the field. Um, No, just a very, very interesting development, and I think it is the right call to keep him on. I think he's been doesn't matter what I think, he has been the most successful manager, at least league wise, probably in my lifetime. The only one you can maybe argue was when Danny Lennon actually won major silverware in the form of the League Cup. So no, it's probably good from St Mirren to show that they're backing the manager whilst the boat's been shook a little bit.
Uh,
Well,
it's maybe just a bump in the road. And if he does sign that new contract, it's just consistency they'll need, as I say, to push them on, hopefully.
that's the thing that Robinson focuses on, though. He doesn't necessarily buy players. He buys attributes, or he signs
Yeah.
attributes. Like if a player's got one or two really good attributes and like they need improved elsewhere, he'll try and do that. Obviously, he looked at Olasanya with his pace and his physical attributes, and then he's also got other players that he thinks are good in other departments, and that's what he really focuses on.
Yeah, he knows his formula. He knows what he wants. You can already envision a Robinson team before it's really fully assembled. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, going for attributes, not that he's David Martindale, but he's not exactly got the best budgets to work with either. So he really is moneyballing the
Mm-hmm.
SPFL in that regard. But moving on, we've got another stellar game at Tannadice. Um, well, what can we say, lads? They Hibsed it. They absolutely Hibsed it. They've perhaps Hibsed this more than they've Hibsed any game in the history of Hibsing it. Or at least it's a top three contender. That'll be one I think for a future podcast. We'll make the list. There needs to be a tangible list, I think. Um, leading 2-1 before Joe Noel gets sent off in the 85th minute, and Dundee United score twice in stoppage time to win the game. Notably Dwight Gale as well, scoring his first goal for Hibs at Tannadice, but alas, it wasn't enough.
Well, yeah,
I think
absolutely. I think there is a common theme here, and I don't think David Gray is going to last very long at Hibs if should they continue. And I actually think this Sunday could be his last game in charge.
after Junior got sent off and they were 2-1 up, I mean, it's maybe an experience, I don't know, but you would think they would just defend and try and see the game out. But I don't actually know what their keeper and their defenders are doing from that moment on. In injury time, I think it's like about 8 minutes injury time, they just capitulate. The keeper pushes the ball out for the first goal, the defenders just stand and watch him tapping it in, and then he punches it right to Dundee United player, lobs it in for the winner. So it's just a capitulation, really.
Well, that's the thing. I was hinting at Balcombe having some troubling form. The Hibs goalkeeper Bursick, believe it from played 50 games for Stoke City, which is a very good level. Every highlight reel I seem to watch him in, he doesn't look to be providing any sort of level of confidence in that Hibs backline. And yeah, for that last goal, absolutely caught in no man's land. If you're going to come out, you simply have to deal with it. You have to clear your lines. Um, And one thing we've got to say about Dundee United as well, because they're on quite some run right now too. Everyone's talking about Aberdeen splitting the old firm. On Rangers' current trajectory, United are right on their tail. They are showing a lot of resilience. I think you've got to give United credit for a lot of resilience because I can think of several teams, even in that scenario against the 10 men, that don't go on to win the game. Um, Hint of fortune or not, I think that resilience is absolutely vital, especially for a newly promoted team. Because as we said, they're on a great run right now, but at some point, that bubble will burst. They're going to have a tough run in the league at some point when they come against more like uh, opposition that are on it on the day. It's guaranteed. I think every team in the league has that run at some point, but to have that level of resilience in your locker, that's going to bide you in very good stead. I think when you come up to that.
I think Jim Goodwin's done a really good job up there, and he's built obviously quite a strong mentality. And he came back against the did at Kilmarnock, and obviously winning that game on Saturday. But in that finish from Eshak was outstanding. Um, so obviously it was behind confidence to be trying finishes like that. So they'll be hoping it continues.
I mean, when you think about when he first came in at Dundee United as well, he was brought in to keep them up, to save them from relegation. I mentioned earlier, thanking the international break because it kind of has that stop-start with the momentum. That effectively is what relegated United when you look back on it. They had that run. I think it was 3 wins in a row. They looked, completely fine, and then beyond that last international break, it's like they just clicked the reset button, and of course they found themselves relegated. Come by the end of it, it's not an easy task to kind of come in and change mentality and the culture of the club in that aspect, to turn a losing team into a winning team. And of course, he's won the division. It was not an easy task whatsoever, but he got there in the end, which is all that mattered. Promotion back to the top flight. I thought they'd have been struggling a bit more adapting to the waters of the top flight, but they've taken to it like a duck so far. So yeah, I think Jim Goodwin definitely, he's got to be due his flowers for that, surely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what about Hibs? You say David Gray, Goggsy. You think he's going to be potentially sacked after Sunday? Well, let's play into that scenario a little bit as well, because when you look at the history of Hibs in recent years, I maybe said it on here before, but I personally feel you can pinpoint everything going batshit round about the time when they sacked Jack Ross just before the cup final, and since then it's been manager after manager, no job security whatsoever. No one ever really lasts. The one they gave the most time to, I think, was Nick Montgomery, and even then, he didn't even get to the summer transfer window to really bring in a real proper window to bring in his own players and implement that philosophy. So the big question here is for Hibs, and you think about it as well, they brought in Malky Mackay to change the structure of the club a little bit, for David Gray being inexperienced to make up for that. If they're already having to go back to the drawing board and get rid of David Gray, simply where do they go from there? What manager is the right appointment from that point?
Well, I don't think there particularly is a right appointment. I think Hibs are one of those clubs that expect a lot better than what they actually are. And they've had this massive investment come in. And of course, an investment is nothing if you can't use it properly. So, like, they don't know how to manage their resources. They've wasted that partnership they've got with Bournemouth because they've not signed anyone in from Bournemouth that you'd imagine would actually help. And I just don't see a world in which Hibs are going to be in the top six this season at all.
Well, yeah, I think that goes without saying. What do you think, Paul?
Sorry, I thought David Gray would actually do a no bad job, but obviously he's quite well steeped in the history of Hibs, and I thought he would have knew how to connect with the fans and maybe take the team forward. But there's obviously something there that just isn't clicking. So I can see as Goggsy say that he might be the next manager at the door, possibly.
No,
Well,
as
I
sorry,
think you're right. I think you're right. He is living up to the history of Hibs based on that result, surely.
yeah, I'll say this right now. I think it's too similar to when Stevie Hamill was appointed by Motherwell as the manager. Like a stalwart of the club that has little to no managerial experience is never a good idea. Because of course he'll say you can say, oh, he knows the club inside out, etc. But he doesn't have the experience of managing a football club, and that is the first mistake Hibs made. And the second mistake that Hibs made was appointing Malky Mackay as whatever his tagline is, because he's essentially a puppet master. Because David Gray will be going to him for any sort of advice, and Malky Mackay hasn't really set the heather alight in his own managerial career. Let's be honest.
I mean, he did that really good campaign with Ross County, didn't he, within the cusp of Europe?
Yeah,
I felt, at least in regards to Ross County, he had done a very good job. But yeah, I mean,
100%.
you're right.
But he also lost that job at Cardiff as well. I mean, he did all right at Cardiff, but again, in my opinion, he's not been historically successful. In my opinion,
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a funny one. I feel like every club has that example when you talk about that Stevie Hamill comparison. As someone that's got that kind of credit in the bank with the club, came through the coaching ranks at the club, after already playing for them. Obviously, with Dundee, I could easily point to someone like James McPake, for example, of a similar mould. But for me, I don't think inexperience is necessarily a bad thing. Obviously, it can bring on fresh ideas. And there is examples of it where it does work out. The first thing that comes to my mind, the epitome of that really, that's Mikel Arteta at Arsenal. When you think of where Arsenal were when he came in, where they're competing now, I think it goes to show that experience, whilst good and comforting, isn't necessarily the all in all. It's not everything about the managerial appointment. No appointment is ever guaranteed to be a success. Things can always go wrong. It's about finding the right profile. I think sometimes clubs can be guilty of bringing in really good coaches that perhaps don't have the man management stuff laid out. But I feel for David Gray in this scenario because what makes him unique compared to the other ones, I mean, when you think they brought in Sean Maloney, who was also a novice, but again, very little time to implement his ideas. David Gray had at least managed Hibs in previous, incrementally,
Yeah.
spells as caretaker and that. So you think, okay, he's got half an idea. He's watching all these guys come in. He's seeing where it goes wrong for them. So maybe he can identify the problems and fix them, having spent so long kind of in and out of it all. But now, yeah, as we say, we're looking at this Hibs team, and I mean, I look at that lineup, and I mean, there's some really good players in there to be performing well, especially when you look at the boys that are bringing off the bench. When you talk about Martin Boyle, when you're talking about Dwight Gale, Dylan Levitt, and obviously guys like Kurevich, Chris Cadden, Kwon, all starting for Hibs. It's a really difficult situation as to where you point the finger. And like I've asked you, where to look next, there's not an obvious candidate either.
You can see what Hibs are trying to do. I mean, a guy that was a long serving player, scored the win in their first ever Scottish Cup win. You can see what they've tried to do with that, and there is a romantic story attached to it, but it's just not playing out for them.
Yeah, it's tragic in that sense because he's got this legacy. You'd like to think they'll still hold him in that kind of. He's a living legend, let's be honest. But obviously, the managerial spells when it doesn't work out so well, that can maybe taint them a little bit. But yeah, I think we're all kind of in agreement in that there's not an obvious candidate to take them on. We don't know which direction they would go for. You can kind of see it already. It'll be the same kind of merry-go-round of names, won't it? It'll be like, Derek McInnes' name here, maybe Michael Beale's name over there. It's yeah.
They're obviously looking at certain budgets, aren't they, when they're bringing in kind of experienced managers. So obviously that's going to play in to who the next one is. So I think they're going to have to look at spending a bit more money if they're wanting to get something that's going to be there long term and get them back to where they should be.
Yeah. Well, elsewhere in the league, I think probably the biggest talking point, really, we've had this incredible start from Aberdeen. And, I mean, when's the last time a team has went 2-0 down at Parkhead and clawed back to get a result for a start?
No, I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
I can think of plenty of teams that go 2-0 up and then Celtic claw back to catch them. But in this, when I watched the highlights, I thought this was really fascinating, was Aberdeen didn't seem to go there with the idea of putting men behind the ball, frustrate Celtic. No, they were open, they played the way they've been playing all season, and yet they have that initial setback, a couple of changes at half-time to tweak a few things, and they're gunning for Celtic. And not only did they get the 2 goals, and we'll touch on the goals as well, but for me as well, there was that whole... I'm trying to think of the player's name for Aberdeen. They had 2 immense opportunities to cut the ball back. One of them was from 2-1 down, just before they scored the equaliser, and I think the other one was at 2-2. Where there's an on-runner at the back post, and all they've simply got to do, pick out the man, open, more than less an open goal, and they've won the game. So I think sharper decision-making in the final third, Aberdeen win that game. But that aside, I mean, you've been overly critical if I was to go on to that tangent. A great result for them, and I mean, what a ball from Jamie McGrath as well. Was it for Sockler for the first one?
Yeah.
It was a cracking ball through, but I mean, Sockler, we've spoke about him before as well. The way he finishes that, I mean, he's got that in his locker, and they're just looking for somebody that's going to get as many goals as Milowski did. So I think, that'll give him the confidence to push on, maybe get some more goals. He should be confident after that. But, I mean, what a game it was as well. We've got an advert for the Premiership, you know what I mean? So if we can get more games like that, that's what we're looking for.
I'm actually quite happy that Aberdeen did claw it back and kept that unbeaten record as well, because then you still have a sort of a sense of a romantic story that's still going on. There's potentially a title race. Like, dare I say
Yeah.
like, I know we're still in October, but like it still keeps along the tagline of, oh, there's a potential title race. Can the Old Firm be split, etc. Like, I'm just really happy that it's still going on, because then it allows other teams like Dundee United and Motherwell to maybe go about their business quietly and just not be noticed. As such, obviously Motherwell lost, but we'll talk about that later on. But I'm delighted for Aberdeen, because like the last thing I wanted to see was Celtic go and turn them over and basically kill the whole story of a potential title race.
I mean, looking at the table right now, they're both joint on points, real neck and neck stuff. And I think Aberdeen, they've got Rangers down the corner as well. That was a massive test. It goes without saying, it's a better result for Aberdeen than it is Celtic.
100%.
If somebody was to say to you, like, Celtic go 2-0 up the first half, you know what I mean? There's not many teams going to come back for that. So it just shows you that they've got that mentality there. And as Goggsy says, they might take it all the way, hopefully.
You ask most fans, you're 2-0 down to Celtic at half time, what would you take? Most people would say 2-0, wouldn't they? it'd be damage control from that point. So no, it's fair credit. And I think probably the most interesting aspect about that is, at the face of that, Jimmy Thielen just thought, right, okay, we're going to keep to the same idea. We're just going to make a few tweaks. He didn't think about damage control. It didn't even come to his mind, really. They went to play their way and they got their result. I spoke to Jockey Scott through the Dundee Football Club's Dark Blue preview show, and it was a question I wanted to raise to him, because I'd listened to other players talk about it. They never say it in front of the media. When you're about to play the Old Firm, it's always the cliches, isn't it? Like, oh, up against it, the underdogs, pressure's on them, though, and hopefully we can get something out of it. The reality is, a lot of these guys, specifically your domestic players, the Scottish players, they're not going in there with optimism and enthusiasm. They're dreading it. They're going there thinking, here we go again. Especially the fact that we've got to play, we have to play these guys, 3-4 times a season, at least in regards to the league. So I asked that to Jockey Scott, because he was sort of the last one to kind of split the Old Firm that way, wasn't he? With Alex Smith, the co-managers of Aberdeen,
Yeah.
They were a game off winning the title. I think Rangers had beaten them at Pittodrie to ensure that they couldn't win the league. And so I thought he'd be the most appropriate one to ask. You're the last one to sort of do it. Why doesn't it happen now? Do teams go into it completely dreading it? And he said, yeah. He said, especially because if you were to make the league bigger and you only played them twice, if you get pumped one game, you think, all right, we'll at least get them out, at our place. And it's a completely different mentality. But with Dundee as well in the early 2000s, we had this Benetti era explosion, colourful players, foreign players that came here to prove a point, to prove themselves. So they went into the Old Firm games with no fear, and we got results. And that mentality had a massive part to do with it. And that's kind of what I'm seeing now with this Aberdeen side, is a manager that inflicts that same mentality. They don't have that same level of fear or dread. Like you guys,
I thought you were going to call in the Caballero game there.
Almost very, very tempting, but I think it goes without saying that to get results like that, the first thing you've got to do, if you're going in thinking, here we go again, you're never going to have a chance. You've got to go in there with the right mindset.
That's right, and I think they proved as well when Celtic came back at them in the last 10 minutes. They have got that mindset because they were able to withstand the pressure again. So,
yeah,
I think they've got it.
Well, thing is, they in a sense, like you did earlier mention moneyballing it under Robinson. I think in a way Aberdeen have done that sort of thing with the incomings from the transfer window in the summer. Like they've brought in some really good players such as Nilsson, who a lot of people did raise their eyebrows at bringing in a 32-year-old for about 350k. But like he is a fantastic player, and he was Brand's best player last season and got them successful in European qualification. And like obviously Mitov saved St Johnstone a lot of points last season and the season before that. So like they've brought in players that have obviously got some really good attributes, and they've sort of perfected that, and they've got a winning formula in my opinion. And of course, Gay, who was away on loan last season, got some more experience at Kristiansund and the Elite Syrian. Like he's been a really good part of what's been successful about them this season as well.
I think what we're also going to see down the line, as Duke's getting more involved now, I think he's obviously got his heart set on leaving Aberdeen. But should they come out this season with something to show for it, I think that decision to integrate him back in the team will end up proving to be a masterclass. Because I think we all saw him what he was like on his day in that partnership with Miovski. When I looked at the two, I thought Miovski's obviously your goal getter, but just in my opinion, I thought Duke looked like the better football player. Like he had more ability, like he had that sharper IQ, and that's kind of why the relationship worked so much, that he could ensure that Miovski will find his runs, get into space. And I mean, some of the goals he would score as well, I think, sum him up perfectly in terms of that football IQ and that ability. The one that always comes to mind is when Aberdeen were away to Ross County. Can't remember if it was last season or the season before. And he's flicked the ball up in the box and set himself up for like an overhead kick. And obviously, it goes without saying the Aberdeen fans went absolutely mental. And it didn't even win their goal of the season, which again speaks volumes of a player like this. I certainly think Aberdeen they're doing something right, and everyone's taking notice. Everyone's absolutely taking notice of this foreign manager coming in, raising the level, because that's sort of what St Johnstone have done as well, and it's a good way to kind of parallel to them. Because when I talk about that Duke and Miovski partnership of old, it reminds me with St Johnstone of Kim Pioka and Sidibe. Sidibe for me is the goal getter. Kim Pioka, the better football player with more ability. And it was Kim Pioka on the score sheet, wasn't it? And we've got the new manager, but he's not in the dugout yet. 3-0 victory for St Johnstone at home to Ross County.
Yeah, I think that sort of shows the level that Ross County are really at this season. They're miles off the pace, in my opinion. I've not really seen too much in terms of positivity towards what they've been doing, but they've lost some really key players, and they don't really have much to replace them with.
I think the tide's kind of turned. I mean, most people would say that St Johnstone were going to be the automatic team to go down. And now they've got the new man at the helm, and you looked at the stands as well. There was a lot more fans there, so they've got a feel good factor happening up there. So I think they'll be the ones to push on, and Ross County might be the ones to drop down into that spot. But time will tell, obviously.
Watching the game, it was Sidibe that set up Kim Pioka for that first one. And I mean, the defending from Ross County is it's absolutely shite. It's the same thing. They didn't learn. I think Kim Pioka both times he's just at the back post. No one's watching him. He's allowed to drift into the most dangerous area in the game both times, and he's converted. Then of course later on, Kirk scores at the end as well. Nicky Clark had one disallowed. It was emphatic victory for St Johnstone. They never looked like they weren't going to win the game. But from a Ross County perspective, that's probably got to be one of the most disappointing games, not only to lose because Ross County and St Johnstone were kind of neck and neck last season, but the fact that it was just by such a big margin in that regard as well.
I think getting 2 players sent off doesn't help you.
No.
Either. So I don't know if you've seen any of the sendings off, but the tackles were terrific, really. And obviously the players didn't think about the tackles, and obviously the way the game might end up if they get sent off. So
I think it's a massive part of that is just the frustration, because like obviously Ross County will be feeling like they can do better, and I think anything's better than getting pumped 3-0 by your relegation rivals with 2 men sent off.
Yeah, well, as well, watching that though, with St Johnstone too, I'm a big fan of Nicky Clark being in that number 10 role to create for Kim Pioka and Sidibe. So it feels like they're now cooking with options that Levine obviously wasn't a fan of. I mean, we know Levine being the guy that didn't want to play a bloody striker for Scotland. But now this kind of new precedent, the manager coming in and thinking, right, how can we be a bit more fluid, a bit more attacking, as you say, and it's brought more people in as well. St Johnstone versus Ross County was the kind of game that when the sports scene graphics card came up, you're sitting thinking that's not a Premiership attendance. Maybe 1,000 people have shown up. I've got it here that there was over 3,500, 3,688 to be precise. So already, yeah, there's clearly a buzz about the place early doors, which can only set a good precedent, I think, going forward. But yeah, for Ross County, I mean, they must be hating the sight of St Johnstone right now because the last encounter was only a few weeks ago. They were 3-1 up, and St Johnstone clawed it back to 3-all. So the question for Ross County fans will be then, well, these are the games that we're struggling to find a victory. Then where does it fall right? Not everyone can just rely on Hibs.
Had me there.
Yeah. But then moving on elsewhere, we've also got another vital game in the title race, don't we? With Rangers going away to Kilmarnock. Now, how about this for a start? By the way, Kilmarnock have got 7 victories in their last 13 home games against Rangers, and Rangers this season have scored the least amount of goals away from home. 4 away games, a 0-0 draw away to Tynecastle. The one goal came in a 1-0 victory away to Tannadice against Dundee United. Away to Celtic, hammered 3-0. And then now, Kilmarnock, beaten 1-0. The pressure is certainly now growing for Philip Clement, isn't it?
Aye, 100%. I'll take this one. I don't think Rangers are in a position to restart a rebuild again. Like I think there's this sort of yearly cycle with Rangers. Like they change manager, and then this manager's the best thing since sliced bread until something changes, and they're in a bit of a rut at the moment. It's like, well, they've got a period of like 7 games in 3 weeks. There is no time to focus on a manager change at all. Like they have to, in my opinion, they have to be patient. And patience isn't a thing that comes with Rangers fans. They want success and they want it now. And unfortunately, I think this season could be a transition period in which they may have to sacrifice even second in order to sort of build on a not so solid foundation, but like what is there that they can actually achieve this season? Because I don't think it's going to even be second, because Aberdeen have started so well. Of course, there's always a period for every club in which they don't do so well, but I don't see that happening anytime soon for Aberdeen. So, and Rangers, in my opinion, don't even look like a Rangers team. Like they look like another bang average SPFL side, which is completely alarming for them.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, on you go, Paul.
So they're very disjointed looking, but I mean, as Goggsy says, you can't make a change to management just now, I don't think.
No. He's just signed a new contract as well, hasn't he?
Yeah, a 4-year contract was not. It's up to 2028, I think, if I remember correctly.
They can't afford that.
Yeah, they've shot themselves in the foot. And they came at a point when they were struggling. They've just been beaten in Europe at Hampden. They had the draw at Hearts. I think they lose the following game at Hearts as well. Just they're not in a good place. And that was the first action was giving the manager a new contract. Sorry, Paul.
No, it's all right. It's just that, I mean, I think they're going to have to give him some money to play with. That's the thing. Because the players that he's got there at his disposal, they're not good enough. So I don't think you can really merit his managerial ability on the players. I was looking at something that was like a bit of analysis a guy done. It was John Walker, I think he's a Queen's Park free kick coach, and he's into analytics and all that. And he was showing the movement that Dessers was making on Saturday, but the players they were dithering the ball, no crossing the ball into the areas where he was. He'd moved into the areas where he scored goals in previous games. So I think it's like the team. The collective team just isn't good enough, and that's something they need to look at to move them forward.
I think it's going to be more than just the team, personally. I mean, you think about that the rebuild they had initially under Gerrard when they found success in the won the league title. That took a few years to build up. And for me, I mentioned the Jack Ross sacking at Hibs is where the instability kind of all started. It's the same story with Rangers for me. I think the point when they sacked Van Bronckhorst, that's where it all went wrong. And I've had this rant a few times. I've never had it on a recording on a platform. Just it's always been with friends. that what I couldn't really grasp my head around was the idea that they had this manager who came in, and I know there was a rut in regard to domestic league performances, but he's taken them to a European final, and suddenly now there's like this platform that summer window, right? Because I know they've not won the cup, but I think they've qualified for Champions League football, European runners up. There's a lot of players they can attract, even if they can't hold on to the promise. They could still sit and say, we're runners up and we're looking to go that one step further. There's something to work with, I felt. And what did they do? They didn't really go down the exotic route with European players, players that can look to use Scotland as a platform to go up and beyond, which I think, for the size of club Rangers are, would suit them perfectly. No, they gave Scott Arfield, 38-year-old Scott Arfield, and 40-year-old Alan McGregor contract extensions. It was kind of keeping what was already there. And although that has its time and place, what you're now beginning to see is that core. There's a time and place for it, isn't it? Eventually, everything needs freshened up, and that's why you look at guys like Tavernier that becomes scapegoated. But then when Van Bronckhorst got sacked, the real thing was he was never backed financially for the transfer window. Then they bring in Michael Beale. Suddenly there's millions to spend. Where did the millions come from? Why were those millions not given to the proven manager that had them competing on the bigger platform? That's, for me, where the instability then begins. Because obviously there's still a lot of Beale's players in that Clermont team. That's where the rebuild has to suffice from. So if they're not going to back the manager that was proven, and they'll throw money at Beale, and now they've got this whole other rebuild to go on, and do they have full confidence to come on? I know they've got the new contract, but how long does this go on before they sit there and say we've made a massive mistake? So there's a real uncertainty with them at the moment, I think, and more than just the manager, but from above the manager's head, and even with the recruitment team, you can't even see what they're building towards.
I think Gerrard got a bit of money as well. So when he came in, so I mean they're going to have to get some money from somewhere, and by the time January comes, it might be too late for them.
Do you know what's so alarming though? Even if Rangers wanted to sack Clement, there is no one to sack him. The chairman's not. There's no chairman. There's no CEO. There's no director of football, and there's no director of football operations.
There's no direction.
Maybe David Murray. David Murray might come back.
Is that really something you want to bring back though?
I'd say yes. I think you go to bring the band back together. Let's get Graham Murray back in just to see up the season.
Why not Charles Green and Craig White as well?
We're getting the band back together. It's a very curious case. I mean, I'm looking at the Rangers lineup just now, and again, it's not a brutal team on paper as well. There's some very talented top tier players. I mean, you think John Souttar, the performance he just had for Scotland, just to go ahead and get absolutely mugged off by Marley Watkins. There's a severe disconnect right now at Rangers, and I think similar to the Hibs situation with David Gray. Let's say Clement left tomorrow. There's not an obvious candidate. But one thing I will give Rangers credit for, right, is every time they have sacked a manager in the recent kind of runs, because I know some folk might laugh at it, but at the point of appointing the next manager, I felt like they've gotten the right guy in terms of they had the best option that was available. Mm-hmm. So when Gerrard left, Van Bronckhorst was the best option available. When he went away, Michael Beale, I didn't even think they were going to get Michael Beale. I thought he was going to patch them off. And no, they managed to lure him in. And the same when it was between Clement, was it Muscat and someone else. I looked at the resumes and I thought, well, Clement seems to be the man there. And they brought him in too. Obviously, they weren't the right fit. And not all of them were the right fit. But now, if Clement were to leave, like I say, there's no obvious replacement. And you're having to compete not just against the Celtic team that are relentless and getting again for this 10 in a row hunt, but with a manager of very, very high pedigree. It's easy to forget that Brendan Rodgers, once upon a time, was one game away from winning a Premier League title. That's what they're up against.
I think they need an investor of some sort to come in, and a golden goose to bring them up from the ashes, maybe, I don't know. But we just need to wait and see, I suppose.
But what sort of selling point can you look at for Rangers, really, from an outsider's perspective. Like, you see Rangers last having a successful season as what they would count as being during a season where fans weren't allowed in. Like,
Yeah.
and anything but a league title is not good enough for Rangers. Like, but you know, I think if you're an outsider looking in, like, it's really tough to look at Rangers being a potential way of getting any profit, because you have to spend so much money to fix what's going wrong.
Yeah, and I think normally when you have a team looking to win the league, there's a formula to the league-winning teams. They all have the sort of same ingredients, really.
Mhm.
And the most important part of that, I always say, it's the spine, the goalkeeper, the holding midfielder, the striker, and how you all break it down. But in Scotland, in the Premiership, it's a bit more unique than that, because it's always the big two.
Mhm.
And in their case, it tends to be, I think, you have to look at what you're up against. And in this case, if you were to take the Rangers team and then take the Celtic team, the strongest lineups available, how many Rangers players get in the Celtic team? Last season, I'd have said two. I'd have said Jack Butland and James Tavernier. Fast forward now, I'd say it's
No.
none, absolutely none. And then, of course, Celtic have that midfield three that picks itself. Hatate, McGregor, and I think the new boy Engels, that's came in to replace Matt O'Reilly. And where do Rangers look to compete? I know Connor Barron's had a good start for Rangers, but is he of that same calibre? I don't think so. I don't even think he was the best midfielder in that Aberdeen team.
I think Cherny looks all right as well.
Yeah,
But
Needs
Cherry's only on
movement.
a loan.
I know that's the thing, so he'll go back eventually. But I'd say it's sort of Cherny and Dessers. I know that Dessers for Rangers fans isn't doing the business, or maybe as quickly as what they want. But I mean, if you look at the analysis that guy done as well, it does make the movements that top strikers make.
yeah.
So it's up to his teammates to supply him with the balls that he can. I mean, if he misses
Yeah,
one, he scores the next one. You know what I mean? But they're not doing that. So
they're not completely deprived of quality. I think guys like Jeffrey and even Dijon Sterling are top players in their own right too. I said Jeffrey, I meant to say Proper, sorry. Proper, the one they got in the summer. Um, yeah, so they're not shy. They're not shy of the quality. But yeah, it's a similar story to elsewhere in the league in regards to Hibs. No obvious candidate. Where do they go from here? A tough question to answer. But an even more difficult question to answer is, how does Derek McInnes do it? That's every single time the Old Firm come to Rugby Park, they seem to always get a result.
I know it's just we need to really sing McInnes's praises more often. I think because as soon as we go through a bad spell, the fans are shouting, "No, he's not doing this, he's not doing that." But I mean, is definitely a successful manager for us, and we need to keep him. So we need to be talking nicer to him. I think.
Yeah, I mean we got to talk about the not just how good Kilmarnock are of a team, but even just like the level that he's bringing into some of these players. I mean, you look at guys like Matty Kennedy, who couldn't really make it work at Aberdeen, and then last season he's instrumental in a Kelly team that are finishing fourth. You're looking at guys like, for me, Lewis Mayo and David Watson. They're the two that excite the absolute life out of me. I look at them and I think they're going to play for the Scottish national team. Like in my head, without a doubt, that's around the corner for them eventually. And that all comes through. I think the standard of Derek McInnes. He seems to bring that extra level out of them. Even Corey and Daba as well. And I think he's English, isn't he? In
Yeah.
Daba, in regards to
Aye.
the
Yeah.
nationality. But yeah, he's another young defender. A bit of experience in Scotland previously. I remember he had that loan spell at Ayr United, and I don't think he necessarily set anything alight down there. But then in comes at Kilmarnock, and he just looks absolutely outstanding, doesn't he?
He's one of our best players last season in Daba,
Yeah.
and we're really glad to get him back. And obviously, McInnes is a part to play in that. But in Sunday, I mean, he got his tactics spot on right from the start. Went to 4-4-2 as well, which I think is our best formation. But and went to high press, and it worked straight off on Saturday with the best of the first half and probably the majority of the second half as well.
Mm.
Yeah, and I mean that Kelly team. You kind of similar when we talked about Robinson. I wouldn't say every McInnes team has the same formula. I think there are some differences depending on what he's vying to achieve. But with Kilmarnock, I think he brought in someone like Bruce Anderson to obviously have a more of a dynamic change. But now we're back to Vassell and Watkins being leading the line. Anderson's coming off the bench. Can you see a scenario where that change will kind of happen, where someone like Anderson can fit in and have the kind of the spotlight to himself, become the goal scorer, complemented by the other players, or is it going to have to be that McInnes is set up this way of old that it's proven, and they have to stick with it?
I think Vassell and Watkins are two players that kind of offer opposite things. And Anderson probably fits into what Watkins can offer, I think. Whereas Vassell holds the ball up well, knocks defenders off the ball, he just makes a nuisance of himself, and plays other guys in. I mean, he doesn't score that many goals, but he does a lot for the team. So I think that'll go against Anderson. He's had chances for the start as well, and there's no doubt the man he scored one coming off the bench, but he might get another chance, he might take it. But the way it is now, the guys are doing the business, so they need to stay in there, I think.
Yeah, I was singing the praises obviously of the two earlier, Watson and I'm drawing a blank. Watson and
Mayo.
Mayo. I forgot to mention that McCrory as well actually was called up for the Scotland national squad this season as well. What do you think then, as things currently stand? Are Kilmarnock going back in for another European race?
Well, hopefully, we don't want to get carried away. That's the first win of the season.
Second.
So we don't want to get carried away in that.
A second, right? Yeah. Thanks, Goggsy.
But you also have to acknowledge that they are now unbeaten in 6 matches in all competitions.
Yeah.
But you've got to remember, last season they didn't start too well either, and they sort of grew into the season and developed a decent run and went about the business quietly, and they crept up the league and they finished 4th, and it wouldn't surprise me if they went and did something similar. But yeah, it's just down to the success of Derek McInnes, and there is always a ceiling to what a manager can achieve at every club. But when McInnes was at Aberdeen fans somehow got fed up of the regular sort of finishing top 4 at least, and then always qualifying for Europe and getting to cup semi-finals and finals, and then Aberdeen didn't have that for a wee while, and the club almost seemed a bit dejected. That's a sort of effect that leaving Aberdeen, Derek McInnes left.
I think he maybe got a bit stagnant up there and kind of lived on his successes, because I think at the end up the fans were complaining it was just one style of play, wasn't it? And it wasn't getting any results. But I mean, I think he's maybe learned for that, because Kilmarnock is playing different formations and using different tactics. So that might be leading into success.
Maybe it's just a mentality thing for me that I would be happy if I wasn't happy with getting into Europe. If you know what I mean, I support a club that only gets into Europe maybe once every 3 or 4 seasons. So having that on a regular basis, constant trips across the continent, constant cup finals or semi-finals, sign me up. I would happily have that.
It would be great. I'm in the same thinking of you. We get that once in a blue moon.
Yeah.
Or every 4 or 5 seasons maybe, but
look at me, I get to Europe.
Sorry.
Maybe you'll get in one day. But I just think we've had our time in Europe, and then it'll go back to normal this season. So I'll be happy with the top 6, to be honest.
Yeah.
I'm happy if Dundee get 4th and get into Europe, Ethan.
I fucking hope so too. It's been so long overdue. I'm of a generation where when I started going to games, we were in the 2nd tier, and my older brothers are always giving me the stories about how they grew up with, Caniggia, how they grew up with Novo, how they grew up with all these
Wansara.
Yeah, Wansara, all the talented players of the foreign legion between Benetti and Duffy, cup finals, Europe, the whole lot. Yeah, and meanwhile, I'm sitting here won the title against Barton at one time. Yeah. No, but, yeah. Well, I will say, when we win the championship, we'll win it better than everyone else. Final day, all the drama. There we go. That's our bread and butter. But here's
Let's
a question I'm going to ask, right? And it's potentially the most batshit question I'm going to ask here. Potential. We'll see how this works. I'll try and explain the logic behind it first. Considering Derek McInnes, when he was at Aberdeen, and when they were at their prime under him, they played some really good stuff. That forward three of Rooney, Hayes, McGinn, it was sublime. He built that team pretty quietly as well, one piece at a time. There wasn't an awful lot of noise about it until they were splitting. They did split the Old Firm, didn't they? They finished second ahead of Rangers in Rangers' first season up. Prior to that, they gave Celtic a run for their money, kind of similar to now, but I think they went from winning 9 in a row. I think it was Paul Quinn scored in the last minute to beat Celtic at Pittodrie, and then it was something crazy like 12 games without a win. So it spectacularly collapsed on its arse. But kind of moneyballing it that way as well to build a team quietly and to compete, getting Aberdeen to cup finals there. Of course, they did win a League Cup under Derek McInnes, but plenty of finals and semi-finals as well along the way. And now you've got Kilmarnock, where the ceiling he's now raising to is drawing the comparisons with Steve Clarke. I think I'm right in saying that, Paul, aren't I? That's the comparison Kilmarnock fans say. Like, which team do you prefer? Was it the Steve Clarke? Was it the Derek McInnes? That's the category that he's kind of being held in right now.
He is getting there.
So, with all that said and done, is he someone that Rangers should then be considering?
Yes.
No. He turned down that job before. He's not going to want that job. He's quite
That's
happy
exactly
where he is.
That's exactly what came to my mind. Was he'd rejected Rangers at the point at Aberdeen, where I think Brendan Rodgers would have been the Celtic manager too. So Rangers identified him as the man to compete at that point. Fast forward, is it the same avenue for them to explore again, or will he knock him back again?
I think he's quite happy with what he's built here. He's getting success. He's got people that love him round about him. So
Yeah.
why would you go anywhere else?
I get the
Unless for
feeling
more
he's.
money, obviously.
I get the feeling he's got a bigger drive with Kilmarnock as well. He strikes me as someone that wouldn't leave on his own terms until there's something as major as silverware. And yeah, you're right. There's no job security with Rangers in that regard. Too, things can just turn sour real quickly. I mean, I say there's no job security. They just gave Kilmarnock a 4-year contract after failure. So what do I know? What I do know, actually, I do know something. The one game I was at this weekend, I'm sorry, Goggsy, we're not going to pretend it never happened. We've left the best for last. Dundee.
I was hoping you'd have forgotten.
Yeah. Well, Dundee travelling away to Motherwell, and you can correct me here because I might get the stats wrong. I don't think I have, though. It's down to memory here. Motherwell, they'd won 4 of the last 5 games, 3 consecutively going into this. Again, it's the magic of the international break. It can just kill your momentum. It wasn't the case for Dundee. Dundee were 4 games in a row beaten. Beaten away to Ross County. Couldn't really get a foothold in the game. Beaten away to Rangers in the quarter-final. Couldn't get a foothold in the game. Then a double home header, Aberdeen and Kilmarnock. A spectacular collapse against Kilmarnock. But Dundee never really looked like they were shy of confidence, did they? They came in the same high degree of confidence they've been playing with against the likes of Aberdeen and Kilmarnock. And for me, the big thing was the defensive display. Dundee, criminal for holding on to a lead. Lost the most amount of points from a winning position last season. Have a horrible habit for conceding goals very late on. And here we are, a goal in the first half, and we've defended it for the entirety of the second half. And for me, Motherwell simply never looked like scoring. And a big part of that was down to the display of Clark Robertson and Billy Kmetcho. Billy Kmetcho had a cigar in his mouth and 4 strikers in his back pocket. He was absolutely excellent. But a full-on professional display all round. Big fan of that midfield trio of Scott Fraser, Lyle Cameron and Finn Robertson together, offering an interesting dynamic. We didn't even look like we missed Mo Silla. A good Dundonian trio, that is. And of course, it was Lyle Cameron that showed up with the goal. He had a very strong performance despite the strike as well. Always very pleasing to see. And yeah, I mean, we'll go to you first, Goggsy. What did you think of the result for Motherwell, first and foremost?
I think a result like that was coming because, I mean, Kettlewell's been getting all the praises for the results we've been turning in recently, but I have been vocal in like our performances. I mean, our first half performances specifically haven't been of the standard, and we've been on we've been able to sort of cover that up with our second half performances in recent weeks. You know, we were finally caught out for our lack of creativity. Because we have a sort of theme where we're playing three sort of support or defensive minded midfielders. There's not really a sort of creative attacking midfielder, and that's what we lack since Blair Spittle left. But also, like, our performances in the first half against Dundee United in the Cup, Hibs away, we were awful, and we were lucky to be level at half time. We got punished for that at Aberdeen, and we were finally punished again against Dundee. And I think this was a sort of wake up call we needed, because, like, you can only go so long playing for only basically 45 minutes in a match uh, for so long, because you're always going to get caught out eventually, and someone's going to wake up and smell the coffee. And it might be a good thing that this happened just a couple of weeks before a cup semi final, because we needed that sort of wake up call. And the next three games aren't going to be easy. We've got Celtic at home, Dundee United away, sandwiched in between playing Celtic at home and then Rangers at Hampden. So I think a result like that was probably needed, because then we're not going into the next week with false pretenses.
Yeah, sometimes you need a defeat to kind of waken things up.
100%.
Paul, what were your thoughts on the game?
It was a result I didn't see coming, to be quite honest, after Dundee's collapse against Kilmarnock and the way Motherwell have been playing. But obviously you've got the international break to contend with as well, so Motherwell fans be thinking maybe it's just a blip coming back from that, maybe rusty players. Lennon Miller didn't have a particularly good game. I think he'd one shot on target or something like that. But it seems to be if he doesn't play, the rest of the team don't play. He's like a catalyst.
Yeah, it was same with that last season when he was injured. We were hopeless, and that was part of our 15 match winless run.
So I think that might have had an effect as well. But you just be hoping that they can bounce back in the next game. But Dundee looked pretty solid compared to where they were the game before. So again, that's just the thing you get when you support. Well, my stepdad's a Dundee fan. I think if you're a Dundee fan, you just don't know what way it's going to go.
Yeah, what someone said earlier, that Dundee are the league's entertainers, because we're just so unbelievably unpredictable.
It probably keeps it exciting.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we're here for. We're not here to do business. We're here to entertain. But no, I can't talk highly enough of Billy Kmetcho in that regard, because in that Kilmarnock game, that aforementioned Kilmarnock game, I thought he was him and Ziad Larkesh were our best performers for 86 minutes. For 86 minutes, they were immense, and then, well, we know the rest, right? Kmetcho at this point round was colossal for the full 90, and it was things that I've not really seen in a defender for us since around at the time of Jack Hendry. Just this level of intelligence, of the way he can take the first touch into these small pockets of space, just relieve a bit of pressure off the back line. And in his case, he likes to move forward as well, so it does actually propel the team in this transition of the attacking phase of play. But it was just this first touches. It didn't matter if it was his shoulder, his hip, or his head, his foot. He was stopping the ball dead more or less every time if he wasn't just clearing it and playing it safe. Because he's a player that's had a few mistakes this season that have led to goals. He had a horrible one against Aberdeen. Obviously very costly in a game where we got beat by the one goal. But yeah, he turned it on. It was an absolute monster performance. And quite brave from Tony Docherty to a degree that, well, for a start, John McCracken was dropped. John McCracken, that was been with the Scotland squad and everything, he was dropped for the game. Trevor Carson got the gloves. I think a lot of fans were calling for it. And Carson, you on about that Lennon Miller strike, that was the only strike I think Carson had to save in the game. It'll be the only one you'll see in the highlights, certainly. Carson provided this level of confidence that we hadn't seen previously, and it's smaller things. Again, it's not a great goalkeeping display because he's not been making the saves, but it's a very solid professional display from a goalkeeper with the smaller things that come a long way. It was things like maintaining possession at feet before picking up, drawing in the press, letting the clock tick down, just buying time, buying space. And of course, he had the captain's armband as well. Him and Clark Robertson, they were active for the full 90. Robertson essentially walked the entire back line through the game. step by step. So his impact can't go underestimated either. And the tackle that he made on Zach Robinson in the opening, it was opening 5 minutes, outstanding. Especially from the angle he's having to come in at. He's having to wrap his foot right behind, right round Zach Robinson to clear the ball. You give Robinson one touch, he's going to finish that. I've seen plenty enough at Dens Park to know he's going to finish that. I know some other Will fans will argue differently. I know he's not had the best of starts down there, but one thing I will say is when it was Zach Robinson, and I've forgotten the Australian lad's first name.
Apostolos Stamatolopoulos.
Yes, Sam Stamatolop.
Easy for you to say, Goggsy.
It is. I've trained myself to say it, so I can say it.
Stamatolopoulos. No? Yeah?
Whatever you think's best, mate.
Yeah. I did. I had it noted down. I wrote it. We were getting praised in the Motherwell media room for our professionalism, and he actually used the word professionalism as I'm writing it on my hand, so I can pronounce it correctly on comms. Stamatolopoulos and Robinson together, I thought were more suited. They didn't do an awful lot, granted, but it had a lot more fight and combat about them compared to Moses and Tony Watt in the second half. And I was actually quite bewildered by that change, surely because you think about Stuart Kettlewell, it's the full week of preparation going into this game. Your analysis against the upcoming team. You then formulate the starting 11 you feel is best suited in that scenario, and you've already, like halfway through, gubbed the strike force entirely. If it was one striker, I can get it, but the fact that it was both of them, me and my co-commentator Liam Dowdle said at the time, that's not going to work. You can see that a mile away, and surely enough, it felt like Tony Watt was anonymous, and that Moses, couple of good runs in behind, but no one able to get him the ball. And that probably would have served him better if he had a Robinson or Stamatolopoulos there to combat, win an aerial duel, win a flick on, feed him something. But for Motherwell, it simply just wasn't on. And the other note I had on with Trevor Carson was that between Trevor Carson, Ryan Astley, Scott Fraser, and there was one more. It was four players in that Dundee team. Finlay Robertson, I think. Four players in that Dundee team was their first start of the league season. So quite a lot of changes and big bold changes at that for that lineup going into that game.
It is weird because obviously I wasn't there, so I can't really give too much of an insight. But I do believe that Stamatolopoulos was ill, and that's why he went running off down the tunnel just before the second half started. I've no idea what happened, but it's just been from the Motherwell pages I've read online. I've no idea what happened, but I must also say though that I still don't think we know our best strike partnership. But I do believe it's Moses and Apostolos Stamatolopoulos. There you go again. I think that's their strongest two up front because I've not seen Tony having. I don't know if Tony's fit enough to last 90 minutes, and I also don't think Zach Robinson's good enough to play 90 minutes.
Yeah, it's a shame on Robinson's part. A very young striker. I viewed him as a prospect still. Major for Dundee. He was the signing that won Dundee the championship under Gary Boyer, really.
Mm.
And he was at his best when he played in a front two. Someone to rub off him. That's when he was at his absolute best. But coming to the Premiership, I thought he would take to it a lot better. But obviously, he struggled to get into the Dundee team. And he had cameos where he would come off the bench, maybe get the odd goal, and still looked fine. I was hoping we'd keep a hold on to him because I can see that there is a player in there. And I think Stuart Kettlewell's faith isn't misplaced in that regard. There is definitely a player to come out of Zach Robinson if they can mould it out of him. But obviously, it seems like he's struggling because you think when he scores against Dundee United in the League Cup quarter-final, there you go, he's got that first goal, he's off the mark, maybe he'll finally get going. Then the next game I watch, I'm trying to remember who Motherwell were playing. It was potentially St Mirren, the last one before the international break. And he's more or less got an open goal. I think the keeper fumbles the ball, it's fallen to him, and rushed it, and he's missed the target completely. A bit of composure there. Maybe he's not got time to take a touch, but just the way he runs in the ball, the posture, the body language, it was all, you can tell before he's even kicked it, he's not scoring that. So I don't know if it's maybe a confidence issue or not, but yeah, certainly that's it's someone that I'm going to continue to watch with great interest.
Yeah, you'll miss the easy chances, but you'll score the hardest.
Yeah, sounds like me when I played. But yeah, no, it's a great result for us, obviously, with Dundee. Need to get out of that rut, and now it's a result, a foundation to build on. We look at now home to St Johnstone next, so it's a great opportunity to go 6-6. And yeah, I think it's interesting that you say that Motherwell sort of need defeat, because that some people might raise an eyebrow at that, but I've seen plenty of examples where the boot up the arse, it completely wakens up from complacency. There's actually some seasons where teams win leagues where you can actually pinpoint it to that defeat is where everything changed for them. You'd be surprised at the amount of times you get examples like that. But overall, I think undeniably that was one of the best episodes of Sports Scene, just like with the sheer drama across all the games in Scotland, wasn't it? And hopefully more to come.
See, the good thing, there wasn't that many refereeing decisions, debatable refereeing decisions. It all seemed pretty crystal clear. Apart from the Hibs sending off, because the guy obviously, Junior wins the ball, but then he goes flying into I think it's Lucas Stevenson. So, I mean, I think they might need to clear that up when they're winning the ball and then they're carrying on through the player. Because some people are getting it, some people aren't.
Even his first booking though, he doesn't even. Was it Glenn Middleton? He doesn't even touch him. He got booked for that anyway. So I think there's got to be discussion about VAR getting involved with yellow cards, not even just second yellow cards. I think yellow cards in general. If it should be a booking, it should be a booking.
That's right. But I think maybe that's a positive that it's kind of clearing up, not as many bad decisions. Hopefully.
Can I just clarify? Have we all seen that video as well from the game at Tannadice? We should have brought up at the time. What was caught in the sidelines? David Gray going to kick the bottle and Jim Goodwin getting absolutely decked.
Yes, that was brilliant.
I think as it stands, that's video of the season. Got to be
100%.
Definitely.
But no, you're right in terms of refereeing. I said that on the mic. Ewan Anderson was the matchday referee for the Motherwell game. Didn't even notice him. He was anonymous, and that's when you know a referee's had a good game. Is when you're not even aware that they're on the park. Especially after some of the batshit crazy decisions, specifically with Kilmarnock in recent weeks.
Well.
So I think that's all we've got. All right, gentlemen, have we got anything more to cover up? Any departing words of wisdom? Anything you're looking forward to? Actually, we can look ahead for the next games. I don't know everyone's set list.
Yeah, Motherwell v Celtic next week is going to be a fun one. Like Celtic, I don't see dropping points in 2 consecutive weeks, so we'll see what happens there.
I think after the drama we've seen last weekend, I'm just looking forward to the next round of games next week, just to see what else we'll get from it.
Well, I'm putting a coupon for.
You never normally say that about the Premiership. That's a good thing.
Yeah. I'm still putting on a coupon for 0-0 draws. I think I've seen how this tends to play out.
They're just kidding us on then. Is that
It's a false advertisement. We're going that whatever that page was called, Shite Scottish Football. It's got to make a comeback. It's bound to. Right, well, guys, I'd like to thank you for your time for coming on today on Salmon's Pizzeria. This is Ethan Hampton, Goggsy, and Paul Cooper all signing out.
Thank you very much.